Hi, it's Carl here, and whether you're a beginner or a more experienced maple grower, I think you'll enjoy these top 5 tips of how you can have better maples in the years to come. So having just enough amount of sun can massively affect your trees. So this is Ukigumo, which I keep in an enormous amount of shade, and it rewards me with these really nice pale colours. But Sangukaku, if you put it in some light, is just fantastic in terms of the green leaves turning into a sort of burnt orange. This is Jerry Swartz, which looks nothing like mine because it's under an enormous amount of shade. Whereas put in morning sun and afternoon shade, like I've got it here, the tree reacts completely differently, and I think it's much more rewarding and much more enjoyable. So many of these cultivars, if you put them in enormous shade, they'll do very well as trees. They'll grow quite well, but they're just not that great looking. Whereas again, in the right scenario with the right settings, they can do really well. It's great when you're out and about like this one at Westonbirt, you can just see what's above these. So that was in a shady location. And if you want the best autumn colours in some of these trees, it is important to keep them, if required, in shade, because they will hold on to their leaves. They're not going to get burnt. They're going to stay in a good situation until autumn comes, or the fall, as we say in America. And then, you're going to get some really spectacular results, to be honest with you. But it's just about getting to know your trees, and I can't stress enough, keep them in pots, move them around, see what they like, and that can be very, very beneficial. There's certainly loads of trees which I'd just planted in the garden. I would totally have regretted this by now. But like Sangukaku here, which just rewards enormously. And they're planted out and about in full sun as well. So you kind of, by these trips out into nature or arboretums and that sort of thing, I think it's really beneficial because you can start to see where other people have planted them, how much sun they've been given. More people with far more experience than me that do this for a living. I mean, and why not learn from them? I mean, I personally regard a trip to an arboretum as a great day out, yes, of course, but it's also kind of a research project. And it's just great to absorb all the knowledge of the people that have been planting these trees for literally hundreds of years, really. So in terms of this arrangement, this took me quite a while to perfect, really. Basically, I know what is sun tolerant now, so they can get at the back and they can shield the plants at the front. So having everything in the right place, the right location, really, really does pay dividends. And that's the same as, fully grown trees planted in the ground or a tree in a pot. It's all the same, really. And again, because these cultivars are known, if you see one react in a particular way, it should pretty much do the same thing in your location. So here we have an orange dream that I've located in a really shady area, having had it in a pot for a couple of years until I really understood it better. And in 1 year, it's put on all this growth, which is brilliant. We've all done it, gone to a garden centre, picked up a tree, put it in the wrong location, wherever we felt like putting it. But by understanding our trees and where they want to be, they do so much better. So Shishikashira here, absolutely fantastic. On a south-facing wall, no problem at all. Totally different situation, really. And yet, as you can see, it's done really, really well over the year just gone and hasn't burnt at all, which is great. So it's quite understandable that a lot of people worry about the colds of winter for their maple trees or the heat of summer. And if they think about wind, it may be sort of wind damage blowing the trees over. But I'm absolutely convinced in my experience that wind is the number one cause of leaf damage. Yes, if you put a Shiraswana in full broad sunlight, yes, that will have an effect. But this is natural potpourri, and consistent wind over time has just absolutely wrecked it, to the point that I sort of cut the remaining leaves off and it started to regrow some again. But it has a terribly, terribly bad effect on these trees. This, in fact, is, to my embarrassment, a Shana, which was in entirely the wrong position, very windy, very difficult for the tree at the front of my house. And that's what has done to it. This is the same cultivar, Shana, just simply put it at the back of the house, different position. This is in full sun, by the way. And yet, because it's a more sheltered situation, as you can see, this one has done marvellously well. So again, it's about understanding that wind is an absolutely key player, because of the damage it can do. So I think it's interesting that I've done videos on installing that gate, and understandably, it didn't do very well. It's just a garden gate. But to me, this has been an absolute revelation, because all of a sudden, this side of the garden becomes fantastically useful. That was happening to all the trees on that side before, massive wind damage. But by putting a gate on there that allows the wind to pass through it and slows it down and offers a great deal of protection, as well as some other measures. But suddenly, this has been a revelation in terms of a really great location for maples. What a world of difference morning sun, afternoon shade, as I say, is entirely what many of them need, and has added a nice bit of colour and brought the best out of them, really. So in order to actually enhance that, I also have added some bamboo, and with that planted it in some really thick sort of containers to stop it getting out of hand, because it's running bamboo, so it will spread very quickly and grow very quickly. There's a little bit of the insulation there, and that's sort of year one, and then a year later it's really filled out, and that's going to turn into a nice little shield for even more wind protection. And of course, like on the other side, there's always a chance to use some other trees, or particularly conifers are very good as wind protection too. So what's in the image there, that little tailor, is actually a cutting which have a really poor life expectancy, whereas these are grafted trees that I've always thought do much better. So he's Mikawa Yatsubusa, which is grafted onto a Acer palmatum rootstock, which gives it really good disease resistance and some strength. Also, by using a cultivar that's known, you can buy something like Western Burnt Orange, which in the autumn is most definitely that colour, which you wouldn't know because it's green most of the rest of the time. The choice of known cultivars is absolutely vast, and I really would encourage people to think about getting something like this, because not only are you getting something that's very disease and resistant and will definitely grow to a ripe old age on its root system, where unfortunately some seedlings and cuttings don't, these will have a very good life expectancy, and you actually are getting a tree that is known and with known characteristics. So in terms of getting something that's going to be really appropriate to you, your part of the garden, your situation, then they're just a much more surefire bet, really. And if you go to a proper Acer grower like this, they're going to be able to give you excellent advice of what to buy. So the whole experience can be much better. This is a sort of typical polytunnel type scenario that you find with Acers. And as you can see, you can buy the small ones I showed earlier, or you can buy larger specimens like this, which are just even more successful and highly likely to do extremely well. So in what seems absolutely no time at all, this is the same tree, so amazing growth rate. So this is a Sagricium, a very unusual tree, imported in the country nearly 100 years ago. And it's great to know that I have one of these, and in time, in theory, it would land up looking exactly like this, which is a nice thing to know. And this is a Shana, which it's also, if you have a known cultivar, is great, because you can go and find these and compare these trees to your tree. So my tree is really red because it's in a great deal of sun, and this is really green because it isn't. So sadly, due to the appalling weather in the UK this year, in terms of particularly having a very wet March, it's been a great learning curve for me in terms of pot sizes and overwatering and the damage that can actually do. So again, people worry about winter cold, they worry about not having enough water, but the hidden killer of trees is overpotting, actually, with some sort of slow but devastating results. So a sort of sensible ceramic pot helps you see the water levels, but it's really quite good to lift things out like this and just inspect the root system, to be honest with you, because it's not something you see every day, but that looked pretty healthy. It's filling the pot, it's growing around the pot, in fact. Whereas this little fella here is in a right state. That's really badly rotten. There's terrible issues with it. And it all comes down to the fact that the tree was in a pot that's too big, it's got waterlogged, and it's not sort of evaporating the water away enough with its leaves and using enough of it to kind of make it and stay viable, really. So it's a shame, because the tree can look quite healthy. You've also seen some little browning around the edges of the leaves. And the tip is, if they're on, all the leaves are slowly turning a brown colour, it looks like it's kind of drying out, but in fact the opposite's the problem. you've destroyed its ability to absorb water, and hence the issue. So in brief, water meters, I think they're brilliant. I don't need them to be 100,000,001% accurate, but they give me an idea, and you sort of get used to how the meters work. And that's much better that it's in a smaller pot, and after a rainy period, it's got down to something sensible, really. So I think these little meters are really worth the outlay, and for a few pounds or dollars can really help.